Okay, I am going to make a mock-up of a Victorian city because I'm afraid of architecture. So in theory this city is Chicago, but I didn't base it on any place in Chicago, in part because the US is known for destroying its big landmarks from the past, but also because I kind of wanted to do my own thing. I spent some time researching Victorian era architecture, which is the Victorian era, depending on who you ask and when you ask them, lasted from 64 to 94 years. That's a lot of time for architecture to change. So I just picked a Victorian building that I liked and kind of based it on that. This is not exactly that building, but it is based on that building. So I just picked a building that existed between 37 and 1901. That's when Victoria was queen, so that's the technically accurate Victorian era, although it is sometimes counted from 1820 to 1914. So the building I based this on was actually kind of a warehouse, and I modified it into a sort of different kind of structure, into something with apartments above, and I was thinking maybe shops or something below under a sort of awning. I don't know what exactly I think it works out fine. I don't think I color it well, but I think it works out okay. As far as the drawing goes, I don't think it's perfect or anything, but for someone who rarely draws backgrounds and is starting to try and do it now, I think it does fine. The paper I've got underneath my hand is there to stop me from smudging anything, or in the hopes that I will not smudge anything with my wrist. It mostly worked. I haven't done that in a long time, but honestly it's really helpful, and it does help with smudging. And smudging is a pain in the mule to get rid of, so I was glad I did it, even though it was kind of annoying to move around and deal with. My lines in this background are not even a little bit straight. They get better during the inking. I did put more effort into making them straight in the inking, admittedly. I really have very little to say about inking. It's just going over lines and making them neater, basically. I get rid of all the extraneous lines and I tighten up the lines that needed it. I sometimes change things a little bit in order to make them better. I don't know. There's not much to inking as far as my process goes. It's just getting lines down in an ink that won't smudge, basically. That's about it. Okay, so some things have been done off camera. I've picked all the colors I might use. I have gotten them in order of their values, not just their hues, so that I can get light to dark proper. I can show you the grayscale image. Blue is always blue, and that is the hue. So periwinkle and royal blue are both the hue of blue. But royal blue is darker and thus has a darker value than periwinkle, which has a lighter value. So if I want to shade right, I want to get my values in order so that I can do them in the right order, dark to light. I've also practiced and tried a few different things for the lighting in the background. This is the color I'm going to use for my back here. It looks more, this looks more like a sunset to me than this. This looks more artificial, so I'm using this. This is a mess, but I want the red here and in that one window pane, and I kind of like how that, I don't like how that looks, but I like how that looks, so I think I'm solid there. And then I think I did a pretty good job getting the lighting to come out here. The reason I didn't show you all this is because it was mostly very short washes and then tons of drying time. And then I think I can mimic this with the colors I want here, I think. I was thinking about doing wood, so I started this, but I don't like it as much as the stone. I'm pretty sure I also finished lining off camera. I messed up here a little bit. I'll either fix it or I won't. We'll see how it goes. Gonna try and start with my background, so that if I fill anything up, I can maybe go over it with other colors. So now that we're out of the background, which is its own sort of disaster of drawing, we're into the background painting. And what I'm doing here is wet into wet watercoloring, which I've never done before, which is why I practiced it on a different page. I've only ever watercolored wet onto dry. And wet into wet, even once it's dried, the way you do it, it's supposed to look like it's fading into itself, even if you let it dry between layers. And I kind of succeed in certain parts, and in other parts I don't at all. But right now I'm putting down a really light yellow because you're supposed to go from light to dark, which I've always been bad at, but there you go. Digital art has only exacerbated that problem. So what I'm doing here is just repeating the same thing, going over it with water and then going over it with the same color. I'm also switching between places because I didn't want to wait for it to dry. I do still have to wait for it to dry eventually, but I wanted to do stuff while it was drying as much as I could. I kind of got some stuff done, but this refusal to wait for shade to dry is how I end up smudging things later, so, you know, don't recommend. Maybe my next fumble through should just be me meditating in an attempt to learn patience, fumble through meditation. So I have got some tans laid out by value now for her jacket. I decided I wanted her jacket tan late in the process. here is where I first start messing up my wet into wet. I get too dark there and then I kind of panicked, and I tried to blot some of it out with the towel I keep on hand. Blotting things out seems to work better with paper towels than normal towels, which I did not know until now. I should have used a smaller brush in an attempt to get things behind her head and shoulder and underneath her hand, the light, but I didn't. I don't know why. I was just convinced that was the brush I was using, and it was the brush I was going to keep using. So there was a bit going on there where I was doing stuff on the street that was off camera, so I cut it out because you couldn't see anything. It will be on camera later though. I'm going to cut to the end of the background about here-ish because it was just the same washes over and over. This, as I do her dress, is wet onto dry, not wet onto wet. This is what I'm used to doing with watercolor, though I won't say I'm good at it. Unlike the background, I did not start with the bottom color, like her dress. I started with the jacket, and I don't know why. It works out fine, I'm just not sure why I did it that way. You can see I'm still using a brush that's really too big for what I'm doing with it, and thus I get too much water places and have to blot it out. I lose my light sources in this. There was supposed to be light coming from behind her, obviously, but also I wasn't sure how much light should be coming from the shot, from her gun, and I ended up not putting really any light source from that. So it doesn't look like she's shooting, and the gun kind of gets lost, which is sad because the whole point of this character was that she was using a Chicago protector, so that's a little regrettable. The fuchsia of her shoes was brighter than I meant for it to be. I swatched everything, and yet somehow I got it wrong. I added fuchsia other places in an attempt to help, but I didn't add it too many places because it was just too bright. It didn't go with anything. So I added it mostly to her sleeves, the cuffs, and then the neck. I blended it out with more bluey purples that worked better for what I was going for, but kept some of that fuchsia. It'll be even less bright later. This is more of a royal purple. I will go over the shoes and the cuffs and stuff with a different purple to tone it down, but right now it's going to stay this way. I also put black trim on everything. Even though her coat is brown, the black trim felt right with black buttons because the dress and the coat were not strictly supposed to go together. In my mind, they were not sold as a set, is what I mean. Her skin starts really light. It does get darker as we go, but she is a white woman because that was kind of what I ended up going with. Here I start darkening things and adding shadows with no regards to where my light sources are, just kind of going with what I would usually do as a light source, which is up and to the right or up and to the left. That's kind of just what I do as a standard light source, which is what I ended up naturally going towards here, even though I meant to do backlighting, rim lighting, and a little bit of lighting from the gun. I didn't know how to do that, and I ended up going with my gut, which was the wrong decision. I went on instinct, and the instinct was not what I should have gone on. I started blending different colors of purples into the dress. I suppose it's kind of shimmery. Shimmery fabric wasn't super common, but it did exist. When doing the face, I was trying to get shadows from the back, but also from the gun. I ended up not liking it and basically shading her whole face the same color, and then I had to darken up the rest of the skin to match. I do eventually get lighting I like on the face. It is coming from who the hell knows where, but I do like it. I like the way the face ends up looking. I'm darkening the jacket here in an attempt to be able to give it rim lighting later. I'm trying to make it darker in the front, but it doesn't end up working. I just end up making the whole thing darker. I wanted to make her hair red, but I start with a kind of yellowy blonde color because I wasn't sure what red hair would look like in the dark, and that is like the one thing I was thinking about. What would that look like in the dark as opposed to, you know, the whole thing? I end up adding a lot of different colors of purple to the dress just to give it more depth, even though really I should have used colors that are a bit more analogous than I really did. Blue purple and purple purple are totally analogous, but they're not quite as much as I wanted them to be, perhaps. I originally intended for her brown jacket to just be the same brown all the way through, but I decided it looked better with darker edging or cuffs. I don't know exactly what to call that because it gave it more differentiation. It made it a bit more interesting to look at, and it also helped it match. Like, the thought of the jacket was that it would match multiple things. She'd be wearing it with multiple outfits, and giving it more colors helped with that. I start adding oranges to her hair here finally. I decided to go with orange/red hair because you rarely see it in media about the Victorian era. It's almost always brown or black, occasionally blonde, but I enjoy red hair for one, and also I wanted to do something a little bit different. At this point I was worried about the shading on her face because it looks very heavy to me and I didn't like it. I ended up going back in with pinks later, which really should be the term for white people. We have pinks as our base color almost exclusively. We ought to be called pinkies. Anyway, I ended up really liking how her face was shaded by this point, which didn't help with my deciding not to do rim lighting or any other kind of like extreme lighting, but hey, sometimes you gotta go with what you like. Even, nah, I was wrong for the piece. I should have killed my darlings. I am starting to try and add rim lighting. You can really see it there when I do the sleeves. I'm trying to keep the darkness at the middle, but I don't really manage it. I was trying to do what I had set out to do, but I didn't. I'm also lightening up her shoes by adding white because to me they were just too dark. They blended in with the dress too much. The shoes and the dress were supposed to have been sold as part of a set, again in my mind, but they still would have been made of different materials and thus they would have had different reactions to the dyes. You can see me getting impatient with the sleeves there because I just got sick of doing them, and with watercolors, especially after the 4th or 5th hour, including wait time for drying, I just get really frustrated. I'm not a patient person, as I was saying, fumble through meditation, but we do get somewhere worthwhile eventually. One of the reasons I added so many of the dark blues is because I accidentally grabbed one at one point and I was like, well, I guess we're going with this now. So there are more blues in there than I intended because right there I made the mistake of adding a royal blue. I hit the wrong one on my palette because I wasn't really paying attention because I was frustrated and tired of doing this, and I was like, well, guess that's what we're doing. That there is me trying to add the shadow from her jacket from like a backlight perspective, but it's not dark enough to look like a backlight or a rim light, so. I did consider going back to this later and darkening things up and maybe making it look more like it was backlit, but I just couldn't make myself do it. So this is what we end up with.